that you find. Okay. All right. So that's your first assignment, and that is due week 2. All right. Your second assignment is the implicit bias reflection. So you're going to click on this tab here, and you're going to go to this website. And once you get to this website, it asks you to log in, but you're not going to log in because we don't have logins. You're going to take the test, which takes you to the page where I am at this time. And then you're going to go, I wish to proceed. Once you get to wish to proceed, you will see a list of tests that you can choose. And the assignment calls for you to take at least 2 assessments of your choice. And then you're going to write a 2 to 3 page paper identifying your 2 personal limitations or biases, analyze any influences, impact or on your practice, how they can impact your practice, and then your growth plan. And so that should be about 2 to 3 pages. All right. Your next assignment is the positions statement. And in that positions for that assignment, you're going to write a 3 to 5 page paper after reading all 3 of our positions from ASCA: the cultural diversity position, anti-racist practice, and equity. And then you're going to find one peer-reviewed journal article on leadership or change theory. And you're going to apply the theory, explain how the leadership or the change theory informs your work as a school counselor, your position statement connection, and you're going to collaborate with stakeholders, identify specific strategies for collaborations with administrators, staff, teachers, PPS professionals, families, community agencies to implement any type of relevant change intervention that can take place. And then also include something on the action for social justice and describe how your approach promotes cultural responsiveness and then social justice and equitability for all students. Okay. And that one is due week 4. Your next assignment is your marginalized populations poster. So this is where we're going to focus on a marginalized population. You choose whichever one that you want. And then you're going to use the Google Slides that shows you how to set it up so it turns into a poster. And then on that poster, you're going to do a group overview, a brief overview of the definition of the group and the relevant context for K-12. Summarize any research, synthesizing peer-reviewed research on barriers that this marginalized population has faced, equity and access and success for this group, including academic performance, engagement, discipline, school climate, cultural, family involvement, and programmatic supports. You're going to include at least 3 scholarly sources and cite them on your poster. And then you're going to include in the third section your counseling actions or strategies, specific actionable strategies as a school counselor that can lead and coordinate to address the barriers. Organized by at least 3 of the following: student academic performance, student engagement, student discipline, school culture, family involvement, and programmatic supports. Then you're also going to include equity impact, how the state intended outcomes, and how you will measure your progress, your participation, any ASCA standards and data outcome. And then design and accessibility, clear headings, readable fonts, visual hierarchy, and ensure accessibility. So make sure that it's clear enough for me to see. The writing isn't too small as you're creating that poster. And then they also have links here at the bottom for you to be able to go over different types of templates. Your final assignment, assignment 5, is your achievement gap lesson plan and action plan. This one's going to require you to use a lesson plan and create a lesson plan for your marginalized population. And you're going to fill out the document using the template that is available to you there. You're going to include your student standards. It should be about no more than two standards, 2 to 3 standards that you would choose for this lesson. Actually, 1 to 2 is better. Not even 3. 1 to 2 because it's only one lesson, right? Your materials, how you would do it, and this is the document that you would use, right? And then you're also going to fill out your achievement gap plan. And this is the blank one that you're going to use. And I'm going to show you again the sample. So the sample helps you to go through exactly what goes where. So you would put when is this lesson plan going to be utilized and what is the end date for the intervention? You're going to use the descriptors. You can have up to 3. This one was 7th grade students having an F in math in the first quarter and scored in the lowest quartile on the math fast progress monitoring assessment number 3 during the school year. Okay. So those are the descriptors. So then you're going to put a metric in place, an increase or decrease. So you want to decrease the number of Fs in math. You're going to have a baseline from 14 Fs to 7 Fs. Okay. And then you're going to write the statement by the end. By the end of the 25-26 school year, 7th grade students who have Fs in math in the first quarter and scored in the lowest quartile on the math fast progress monitoring assessment number 3 during the 24-25 school year will decrease the number of Fs from 14 to 17. And it should be that specific. Okay. Then you go on and fill out the other areas. So if attendance is an issue, if discipline is an issue, these are contributing factors that could lead to, that could impact the strategies for you reaching the goal. And then you want to get some insight from all of these members, okay? So you want to interview a couple of people as you're writing that specific goal. And then if there are any systemic barriers and if there's any contributing factors that you'll address. And then you're going to use your ASCA behavior mindsets. You're going to copy your learning objectives from your lesson plan. And then you're going to create your 5-question pre and post test. And your pre and post test can be a Likert scale. It could be a yes or no. It could be knowledge-based answers. Those are all options. Okay. And then you're going to put in the instruction, appraisal, and counseling for your direct services and any indirect services, such as collaboration, if you're going to be working with the teachers to collaborate with them to get your data and go from there. All right. All right. So those are our 5 assignments for the course. Any questions on it? This takes a lot of collaboration. Yes, Christina?
Yeah, for assignment number 1, if I'm for my field work, I'm doing my first 200 hours in private school because I work in private school. So it's going to look different from, the public school testing and stuff like that. Do I just use the testing data from like the ISA testing, like the test that we use to measure, and then it's just the same, just use what we use.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on our 5 assignments so far? No? All straightforward? No one's confused? Because this one is really technical, so this is kind of really applies to our program. If you're not working at a school site, it's a little more difficult. So, like Christina mentioned, she's working in the private, so she's going to use all of the private state, the testing that they use to measure, and she's going to list all of those things. So if any of the students aren't achieving, she's going to set the standards to be okay. This is where they should be. This isn't, they're not there. This is what we want to decrease or increase and move forward from there. Is there anyone else that is not working at a school site? Okay, so you should be doing your field work at one of the school. Not yet? Not yet?
Now, currently in practicum, but I do have a school site. It's going to be a private school as well.
Okay. And Allison, do you have a school site also?
So I was just going to ask because so we're in practicum right now, and my practicum is an adult school, but I already have my assignments for my field work. So which schools would I focus on? And my school sites are
You don't
middle
want to
school, high
focus on
school.
the adult school because they don't have assessments. So you want to focus on the
Where my field
the
work sites will
upcoming
be.
field work. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. So I want you guys to make sure that you take the time to look over these and make sure that you look over what is required. Like I said, the school plan, getting um, access to the school plan, it should be printed out somewhere on one of your sites. And you just want to make a couple of copies. The copies you want to make is of the goals section of for the achievement, right? So you don't have to do all of it, but they might have 4 goals, they might have 7 goals, they might have 10 goals, but you want to make sure that you get the section and just make a copy of it so you can take it home on the actual achievement. Obviously, for everyone in public, we're using CAS, right? And then we can use any other measure that that school may use. We've moved to iReady. So iReady is our best measurement to go, for CAS. And that's the one that seems to mirror it the best. So that's where I wrote my goals off of iReady because you can't measure CAS from one year to the next on their scale score. So that's just something, just a technicality. All right.
Sorry, I do have a quick question.
Sure. Go
Is
ahead.
it if the school, because we've done like the goal plans with Hatching Results like at our counseling PDs with Compton, and we've used different data like sometimes like grade level data based on like how students performed in the classes in whatever specific subject. Can we go off of that, or does it have to be specifically the
Yes,
CAS?
absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
okay.
Because each district can uses different measurements throughout the year to get to what they want to get to for that state measurement. So each one is, measuring, trying to say, okay, well, this one, we think this one works best. We flipped ours so many times. We were
Mhm.
using our books with benchmark, but they weren't coming out exactly the same. So a student would score well on a benchmark, but then on the assessment test, the state standards test just completely flops. So obviously each district is working to see which one mirrors it the best and which one is going to give us the results that we really want throughout the year to get to that CAS, right?
Okay.
So you're constantly changing those. Okay. I've,
Mhm.
I've seen a million of them over my 29 years. So you're going to use whatever your district is using at this time, whether it's great or not.
Okay.
You know what I
Okay.
mean? So
Yes.
yeah, if it's not the best measurement, that's the one that that district is using at this time. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. No problem. All right. I'm going to move right into our lecture. I'm going to be talking about chapters 1 and 2 of the book. All right. So in this course, we're going to be talking about developing a framework for action. So how do we take action with the data that we receive? So some of the things that has happened in counseling in the past is that we just kind of came on and we just mostly spent our time triaging, and triaging doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't help us to guide our counseling program. It doesn't help us to make sure that we're making dents and we're making progress with our students. So they want us to really, really focus on data, and they want us to make sure that we are giving everybody equitable access. It's not equitable if we count out a group or if we only work with those parents who call us and ask for supports, or when you reach out, the parent says no. So we want to put a program together that allows us to touch as many students as we can, and that we have a procedure about going to that, making sure that um, we can show why we chose what we chose, where the data comes from, and how we're assisting all students. Okay, whether we're working with academically, social emotionally, or career in college. Okay. So our framework talks a lot about our underfunded schools and the systemic racism and educational inequities. We need to move past any discomforts that we have. All counselors have a role to be able to develop beliefs, knowledge, and skills and self-efficacy to discuss race with confidence. So we may not agree. We may have all types of differences of opinion, but we want to make sure that everybody's being heard and that we're addressing and that we at least put it out there and on the table if we see some levels of racism. Okay. We want to broach early and often about race, ethnicity, culture, and build connections with students. So if we see that a student group is lacking exposure or not being seen or heard on campus, we see other groups and after school groups and organizations for students, but there's another group that's missing. We want to make sure that that student group is heard and that they have the same opportunities as all the other athletes or the more common ones. We want to be compassionate with our communication, and we want to continue to have ongoing preparation so that we can have the difficult conversations, because we're not always going to agree. But if something is blatant, we want to call it out so that our students feel that they're being represented. So our role as schools counselors is equity and inclusion. And equity and inclusion is a big one. Okay. With our special needs students, we're moving more towards in California inclusion. And so that's leaving us a gap. We're getting rid of any special day classrooms that are using the same books that are in the regular ed classroom and putting those students with special needs into the regular ed classrooms and giving them supports as needed. But that doesn't work for all students. So we're having to adjust to that because we have students that are coming in with behaviors, or they're maybe even more low functioning, nonverbal, and they're being placed into our regular ed classrooms. Now, that isn't to say that they don't belong there. We have to give them time to determine whether they do belong there. And that takes a lot of people. So that is a difficult conversation. And a lot of teachers are not used to that because they have maybe 4 kids with special needs, 2 nonverbals, or 3 to 4 nonverbals, and students that are screaming, having behavioral issues, and they're still trying to teach all the other students. So we're trying to figure out how to not take away their access, because they have every right to be in the classroom and have access to the same things that the other students do. But we have to go through the processes to determine if those students are in the right placement. And then we have our other placement, which is moderate to severe or other different types of special needs placements. And so that's a big gap in between regular ed and mod to severe. So we're taking a look at that, and that's kind of what our inclusion looks like. We're putting everybody in the regular ed classroom. Equity is making sure that we give everybody this, what they need to be successful. So if they need devices, if they need more supports, if they need technology, if they need all of those other things, that's how we're making them, our students, be able to access the curriculum and be able to show us what they know. Identity intersections shape our work. Our identities and those of our students influence how we interact and build trust and support student growth and achievement. So just because we have a bias, it doesn't make us a bad person. So that's what we need to understand. Just because we don't agree or maybe something affects us a certain way, we all have to go through that thinking process where we say to ourselves, hey, is this true? Why do I feel this way? And I don't have any evidence towards this. So if I don't have evidence towards this, then I need to change my thought process, okay? Or hear what others have to say. Having the bias isn't the problem. It's acting on that bias and making and taking opportunities away from other students because we're acting on those biases, okay? And then self-awareness strengthens our philosophy and practices. When we're counselors, we need to understand our own culture and identity, and they help us to better equip and examine our biases, to commit to equity-minded, student-centered counseling. Okay? We need to have open, honest conversations about race so that we can be respectful, courageous, create trust, foster belonging, and create critical equitability supports for all students. So here's some key equity focused school counseling terms. We have our 504 plan, that is our students with under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 that provides accommodations, ensuring students with disabilities have equal access to education. This is the one where a student can have a diagnosis that could be life-threatening, affect the learning, does not allow them to get access to the curriculum, and we can put different plans together for them so that they are able to access the curriculum, because maybe all they need is just a little extra tool so that they can be successful in the classroom. A device like a teacher using a microphone for a deaf student is an example of that. Okay, because the microphone, the teacher's voice may not be loud enough for that student to hear everything and understand what is needed or what the assignments are in that classroom. So when we're asking the teacher to wear that microphone so that the hearing is a little bit louder, or so that the student can, it goes directly to that student, then the student now can access what everyone else is accessing and hear it for the first time and not need to have it repeated multiple times. Okay. We have our ACEs. This is our adverse childhood experiences. It is a test or an assessment that potentially goes over traumatic events that can impact a student's health, learning, and behavior. Counselors use this trauma-informed practice to support healing and resilience. So ACEs are used commonly to help us to be able to understand where this child is coming from and how we can help them learn. Because if their lid is flipped 90% of the time because they walk into a classroom with 34 or 35 students and they're scared, anxious, they're not going to access the curriculum. They're not going to be able to sit down and learn like like other students who are not coming from a trauma and a traumatic event or suffering from a traumatic event. We have our American Disabilities Act, or ADA. It's our civil rights law that prohibits discrimination based on disabilities and requires equal access in schools, programs, and services. Black and Brown is the term that affirms the racialized experiences and histories and cultural strengths of students of African American, Latino, Indigenous, Asian, and other global minority backgrounds. Our HBCUs are historically Black colleges and universities. These are the institutions that were founded before 1964 with the mission of educating Black students and promoting leadership, equity, and excellence. Our intersectionality. This is our frameworks that was developed by Crenshaw in 1991 that recognizes how overlapping identities such as race, gender, class, ability, and sexuality shapes unique experiences of privileged and oppressed. Then we have racism, which is the institutional and systemic system of oppression that creates advantages for whites, people, and disadvantages for people of color through policy, practices, and cultural norms. We have our significant disproportionality. This is our overrepresentation of students of color with disabilities and other marginalized groups in special education and exclusionary disciplines. This is a good one to look at. Is your school over-identified? So is the school over-identifying the Black and Brown students in any one of these categories? Social justice, it's the pursuit of fair and equitable treatment, access, and opportunity for all people. And school counselors are required to advocate, educate, empower, and dismantle any inequities. We have our tribal colleges and universities, our TCUs. These are accredited universities that serve our Indigenous students and communities, honoring sovereignty, culture, and self-determination. And whiteness are social constructs that center the white dominance, normalized white cultures, and maintains power and privilege in institutions and societies. So our school counseling, clinical and skills related terminologies. As school counselors, our role, we do career counseling, like I discussed, individual counseling, group counseling, and class counseling, delivering classroom or large group lessons. So those are one of the strategies that you will use in your lesson planning. Will this be a classroom lesson, a small group lesson, or an individual counseling session? No, your lesson plan has to be for either a classroom or a small group. We have culturally responsive and sustainable practices. It matters because we need to integrate our cultural awareness and humility and students' lived experiences into all counseling activities, making sure we're representing all students. We need to ensure that programs are relevant, affirming, and accessible to diverse identities, languages, and cultures. Many times when I go in, I have to translate my lesson for all my SEI learners that are there. I have to bring in, I might have a document that is in English only. I'll have to translate that so that all students can participate in my lessons when I go into the classroom. We need to build sustainable systems through our going learned reflections and accountability. And then we have culturally responsive counseling strengths that trust, belonging, and positive outcomes for all students. How we can grow is we need to challenge ourselves, right? We need to navigate our biases and our discomforts and our microaggressions. We need to limit our cultural knowledge or confidence. We need to make sure that we are aware of our systemic barriers and limited resources. And then here's some strategies for success. We need to build cultural competency. We need to include language and strength-based approaches. We need to create brave, affirming spaces for dialogue. And then we need to seek supervision, training, and peer support. So as we collaborate, we are stronger together. We need to partner with our families and experts on their children and cultures. We need to build relationships and trust through consistent, respectful communication. Collaborate with our community organizations to connect students with families, resources, and opportunities, and build collective partnerships, expanding support systems and creating more equitable pathways for student success. When we're collaborating with our partners in school counseling, we need to have family engagement, two-way collaboration, making sure we have our parents that are there. They're able to speak, they're able to share what they feel, and that they are able to have respectful relationships rooted in trust. And we need to communicate with them often and early. Sometimes we wait, we do about 3 parent workshops, and we think that that's enough for us to collect data. And a lot of times, if you pay attention to your culture, your school's culture, the parents come at specific times. You'll notice that they all are really gung-ho at the beginning of the school year, and they sort of start to taper off towards the middle. Mostly just out of safety and trust, right? Once they feel that their children are safe at school, they kind of taper off and they say, oh, I already know that. I know this. But we want to continue to reach out, maybe put some of our parent meetings online so they can view them later for all of our working parents. Make sure that they feel connected and communicate with them. Instagram, many schools are using Instagram. That helps a lot. So they get an opportunity to see what's going on at their school. We know parents are scrolling Instagram, so why not scroll their school's Instagram and maybe even see their child on there? And that makes them excited because they say, wow, I didn't even know they were on Instagram. I didn't know they did that post. And that kind of helps them a lot. So AI at its best. We need to make sure that we have parent liaisons, like we have our PTO and then our dogs, which is our dads of great students. Inviting them to come onto campus, give them roles there, making sure that they're represented. We have a high single dad ratio, parent situation. So we try to bring on the dads as often as possible in different roles. So, which is unusual for many campuses, but at my campus, there's a lot of single dads raising their children. We need to build inclusivity and culturally sustaining partnerships, making sure that all the languages and all the cultures are represented, whether there's just 1 or 2, a small percentage, they still need to see their culture on that campus. It makes them feel included. And then we need to advocate and navigate any tensions. So tensions will arise, but if we keep our cool, then our parents will keep our cool. If we make sure that we're fair and every voice is heard and represented from all of the families, then we can address those tensions with empathy, transparency, and share our goals. We can stay solution focused, student centered, and a commitment to equity. So here's some more counseling cultural terminology. These are also referenced in the book, so you'll get a chance to read those in chapters 1 and 2. So our roles are consultation, coordination, program evaluation, student scheduling, and register and enrollment. Now, when we're registering and enrolling the students, when you look on ASCA, it shows you that we're not just doing schedule changes. Schedule changes isn't what our role is. Our role is this class the right class based on the data that we've collected for that student? So we're actually sitting down with that student. We're looking at the history of their grades. We're looking at their assessment. We are focusing on their successes. We're looking for interventions that they might need at whatever level, providing them with that before we do a class change. Then we do the class change and we determine, we say, based on this data, this is what we think is best for that particular student. Okay, so registration and enrollment should be based on that individual counseling session that you're having with that student to ensure that they're enrolling in the proper course for them so that they can pass, get grades, and be eligible to enroll in college. So, okay. So we need to develop our personal school counseling philosophy. So what is our philosophy? It needs to be rooted in motivation and philosophy, grounded in structure with our ASCA national model. It sustains you and your work, and we need to be culturally responsive and sustain application. Here's some examples of cultural application in our school counseling. For our high school calendar events, we have academic support nights, diverse programming, and engagement. We modify our SMART goals and assessment tools, making sure that they're specific and meaningful, measurable, achievable and supported, relevant and respectful, and time-bound and flexible. With our elementary school lessons and scenarios, we want to make sure that the scenario-based learning is practices empathy, communication, responsibility through real life situations. And then we want to have discussion questions for critical analysis and cultural sustainability. Some key takeaways from chapter 1: education is not equal for all students, and systemic racism continues and it persists. School counselors hold privilege and responsibility to advocate for equity. We need to combat racism, requiring ongoing knowledge, skill, and courageous conversations. We need to have collective action and preparation are essential for sustainable impact. All right, moving on to chapter 2. So we're talking about racial identity and development, racial isolation and microaggressions and low expectations. This is where Amber learned that she was the only Black student and she experienced microaggressions like a teacher's negative response to her cursive writing, and she felt the weight of low expectations. This was a scenario in the Columbus, Georgia, and her family supports a foundation. At home, Amber was surrounded by love, encouragement, pride, and Black identity. Her family affirmed her worth and pushed her to excel, giving her strength and perseverance. Her early experiences shaped her awareness and resilience, and her education and mentorship fueled her success. So this is what we want to make sure that all of our students experience with our assistance. So we're going to have a framework for identity in our school counseling. We're going to develop our niche. What is our niche? So what strategy, what theory works best for you? I use solution-based. That's the first one, the one I use most, the narrative theories. And those are the ones that I connected with the most. And I've used those throughout. I have had experience in elementary, middle, and high school. Currently, I'm in elementary, so solution focus works the best for me. Being able to give them a solution and getting them there sooner than later. Narrative also works for me a lot. They're able to tell their story because little kids always want to tell a story. And then after telling the story, I have to get them right to reshaping it, reframing it, and moving on to the next thing so that they can come to a conclusion, find out what they want and what they need, and then send them back to class. So that's my niche, what I've been doing since I've been in elementary, which has been for the last 12 or 15 years now. We want to have ecology and cultural dimension so that our families, schools, communities, and society and cultural context interact and shape how our students make meaning of themselves, others, and the world. So that's what our lessons should focus around as we go into the classrooms. As school counselors, we are ecology agents, influencing our environments, our norms, our practices within the school. And we help to create inclusion, affirming, and cultural responsiveness with our school cultures that scaffold students' identity development across contexts. And then we need to integrate our developmental theory into practice. So ground our work into developmental frameworks, deepen our understanding of students' experiences, strengthen our ability to design intervention, and build relationships and advocate for equitable opportunities and outcomes. So racism does have an impact on our social stratification and on child development. So it ranks, social stratification ranks individuals by race, class, and other attributes, and it influences our perception and opportunities from an early age. Racism and segregation create hierarchical barriers and rooted in power differences that shape resources, relationships, and life chances. Segregation and prejudice have tangible negative effects on development, including academic outcomes, mental and physical health, and seeing and sense of belonging, disproportionately harming Black and Brown students. So this is what I was talking about as far as us using our data to design what class that student should be in. Now, you know that parents aren't always going to agree with us. We may say, okay, they have failed Algebra 1 4 times. So we would change their coursework and try to figure out what they need. But some parents are still going to want them to go on and take that next higher level course in order to apply for a college. So we won't agree, but as long as we present the data, we still want to go ahead and give them access to that higher level course. Okay. Whether we want to give them supports while they're in that higher level. We want to make sure they have access to the teacher, tutors, any other interventions. And then we let them go through the class. We never want to just say, well, the data states that they can't do it, so we're not putting them in. Okay. So counselors have to address these systemic issues through advocacy, cultural responsive practices, equitable systems to remove the barriers and support every student's growth and potential. So racial socialization processes in Black families. These differ from ethnic socializations focusing on race-based messages. It is the process through which Black families prepare children to navigate the realities of racism and affirm their racial identity. As we know, you can come from different parts of the world, be African American, and our experiences can be completely different. So we want to hear each and every voice and understand where each and every student and their family is coming from. Because just like in any culture, there's no one size fits all. Everybody has different experiences. And so we want to hear about all of those experiences and design the best solution for that particular family. Okay. Challenges and opportunities, cultural mismatches in school. So here's just some specific data on most teachers in the U.S. are white females, while 44% of U.S. schools have no racial ethnic minority teachers. This creates a cultural mismatch. So when we're walking onto campus, sometimes some of the others don't see anyone who looks like them. This could be also about religion. This could be also about, it could be so many other cultural things that come up. And so it's important that we understand that these automatically exist so that the students are maybe coming in with some of these mismatched feelings, cultural feelings, right? Um, the mismatch, the cultural misunderstandings and low expectations. When an educator misunderstands a student's culture or how hold low expectations, it can lead to disengagement. So again, like I gave the example of if the family doesn't agree and they want the child to go to a higher level course, we just present the data and then we allow them to move on and make suggestions and not just say, well, you move on and whatever grade you get, you get. No, we want to say, okay, we also offer supports for that course here, here, and here. And so that the family leaves knowing that they made a choice, but also that the school provided them with additional supports for that course. Not, oh, well, I hope you make it, you know? So that's the kind of attitude that we want to carry when we're looking at these expectations. Okay. We want to integrate the students' culture. It improves our outcomes. So once the student is hearing about their culture, their backgrounds, then this helps to strengthen language experiences. It boosts academics and engagement. It increases achievement and belonging and reduces the need for code switching. And then we need to examine our own privileges and our own positionalities. So sometimes we may have come from a very wealthy background, a very prosperous background. So things may have been a little bit easier for us to access, whereas someone else is coming from a different position. Code switching and its implications for students. Code switching is an adaptive behavior in language to dominate cultural norms to gain acceptance. It's often a response to white middle class expectations in schools. It can place emotional and cognitive burdens on the students. And its culturally sustaining practices seek to eliminate the need for code switching by creating affirmations, inclusive environments, and honoring a student's identity. So our role as school counselors is to promote positive racial identity, understanding and reflecting on self, engaging in critical reflection, building partnerships for stronger outcomes, and taking intentional, informed actions. Okay, so let's see. Our takeaways from this chapter is racial identity is dynamic, evolving, and influencing behavior and self-perception. Positive racial identity development is fostered by supportive families, schools, and environments. School counselors play a critical role in creating affirming, inclusive school climates. And we need to build skills to address racism and support identity and that it's essential for our school professionals. All right. Okay, so let me take roll really fast. Okay, let's see. Everyone is here, I believe. Let's see. I have 18 people online. Perfect. Okay. All right, everyone. Any questions or concerns about the material thus far and what we'll be exploring through this course? Questions, concerns? All right. Well, you know the drill. The same goes for last semester, our last summer submission. If you have any questions or concerns, I know school has begun. Different requirements for you may occur on the night that we have a course. Just make sure that you let me know that you'll be absent. And I don't give you the points for not being here, but then you can do the extra credit, the OWL, the other ones that will help you to get those points. So don't worry about not being present. I am recording all of our sessions so that you can always go back. You can, if you miss a class, that is a opportunity for you to do the assignment attached to that too, to get your 15 points for your missing the class and those points that are count for that. So you would use the recorded version of the class in order for you to complete that assignment. All right. Questions, concerns? All right, get started on your work. You know me. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a
Good
nice,
night.
thank you.